The man who smiled in court, a criminal with no remorse. It began like any ordinary trial. A crowded courthouse, the hum of reporters setting up cameras, the shuffle of jurors finding their seats. But when a defendant walked in, everything changed. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even pretending to be innocent. Instead, he smiled, an unnerving, wide smile that made even the judge shift uncomfortably in his chair. This was the case of Daniel Reeves, a man whose crime shocked an entire community, not only because of what he did, but because of how he reacted when the world demanded justice. Daniel Reeves grew up in a small Midwestern town. To neighbors, he was quiet but polite, the type of man who mowed his lawn on Saturdays and waved when you passed by. No one knew about the darkness festering beneath the surface. For years, he lived unnoticed, moving from job to job, drifting through relationships that ended abruptly. But behind closed doors, Daniel kept secrets. Secrets that would eventually surface in the most horrifying way imaginable. It all started with a missing person report. A young woman, Emily Carter, vanished after leaving work one evening. Her car was found abandoned by the side of the road, purse still inside, keys dangling from the ignition. Investigators combed through hours of surveillance footage, knocking on doors, searching for witnesses. Weeks passed, but Emily never returned. Then another disappearance followed. This time, a college student. Then another. The town grew restless. Parents wouldn't let their children walk alone. Curfews were enforced, and whispers spread that a predator was among them. The breakthrough came when a hiker stumbled upon something buried in the woods, a shallow grave. Inside was the body of one of the missing women. Forensics revealed a chilling detail. The killer hadn't acted out of impulse. The crime was methodical, deliberate, and planned. Police knew they were hunting someone who enjoyed control, someone who wasn't going to stop. Investigators built their case piece by piece. Through interviews, tips, and evidence, one name kept surfacing: Daniel Reeves. He had been seen near the areas where victims disappeared. His work schedule aligned suspiciously with the nights of the crimes. A search warrant was issued for his home. What police found inside was disturbing. In the basement, hidden behind a false wall, was a small, soundproof room. Inside were chains bolted to the floor, a chair with leather restraints, and shelves stacked with videotapes. Dozens of them. Each tape was labeled with dates, some going back years. Officers at the scene described the discovery as something out of their worst nightmares. Reeves was arrested the next day without resistance. As police led him away, reporters captured his expression. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was smiling. At first, investigators thought it was arrogance, but in time, they realized it was something else. Pleasure. Reeves seemed to enjoy every second of the spotlight. In interrogation, he barely spoke, but when he did, his words were chilling. "They wanted to disappear," he said calmly. "I just helped them." The trial began months later. The courtroom was packed every day. Families of victims clutching photographs, reporters scribbling notes. The prosecution presented hours of evidence, videotapes, journal entries, forensic results, all pointing to Reeves as a predator who had stalked, kidnapped, and killed. The defense tried to argue insanity, claiming no sane person could commit such acts. But every time the prosecution showed evidence, Reeves smiled. When the first tape was played in court, families wept, jurors shifted uncomfortably, and the judge ordered the video stopped after only a few minutes. But Reeves, he leaned back in his chair, grinning as though he were reliving a favorite memory. A journalist who attended the trial later wrote, "It was the most disturbing thing I had ever witnessed. Not just the crimes themselves, but the way he looked at us, as though he was proud. He didn't just want to get away with it. He wanted us to know he had done it." The prosecution called witnesses, detectives, forensic experts, even former co-workers who recalled Reeves' strange behavior. One co-worker described how Daniel used a joke about getting rid of problems permanently. Another recalled how he always lingered too long when women left the office late at night. At the time, no one thought much of it. Now, those details painted a chilling picture. The families of victims gave impact statements. Mothers and fathers begged for justice, their voices breaking under the weight of grief. But Reeves sat motionless, only breaking his stillness to offer that same unsettling smile. The climax came when Reeves himself took the stand, against his lawyer's advice. He insisted on speaking. The courtroom held its breath as he began. His voice was calm, even polite. He spoke about his childhood, his jobs, his relationships. He admitted to the crimes with shocking ease, detailing how he followed his victims, how he planned everything in advance. It wasn't about hate, he said softly. It was about control, about proving I could. Gasps filled the courtroom. Some jurors looked away. Others clenched their fists. The families sobbed openly. And yet through it all, Reeves smiled. The prosecutor, visibly shaken, asked him, "Do you feel any remorse for what you've done? For the lives you've taken? For the families you've destroyed?" Reeves tilted his head, smirked, and replied, "No. Why would I? You call them victims. I call them mine." Those words echoed through courtroom, sealing his fate. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. It didn't take long. Within hours, they returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge delivered the sentence, life without parole. But even then, as the final words were spoken, Reeves smiled. His grin widened as he was led away, chains clinking against the courtroom floor. Reporters captured that moment, and a photograph of Daniel Reeves, smiling in court, would appear on front pages across the country. It became the symbol of a man who showed no remorse, no guilt, and no humanity. But the story didn't end there. Years later, prison guards would describe Reeves as the same unsettling figure. He never fought, never caused trouble. But whenever news of another crime hit the papers, Reeves would smile. When journalists wrote about him, he smiled. When families sent letters demanding answers, he smiled. It was as though he thrived on the pain he caused, feeding off the attention long after his crimes had ended. Psychologists who studied the case argued that Reeves was a textbook example of a true psychopath, someone incapable of empathy, someone who saw others as objects to manipulate and destroy. One expert put it bluntly, Daniel Reeves didn't just commit crimes. He performed them. He won an audience. And in court, he finally had won. Today, his name remains synonymous with evil in that community. The courtroom where he was tried is remembered not for the verdict, but for the image of the man who smiled as justice was served. Some say his case is proof that true evil exists, that some people are beyond redemption. And so, the story of Daniel Reeves, the man who smiled in court, lingers like a scar on the town he once haunted, a reminder that monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes, they sit in plain view, grinning, as the world tries to make sense of the darkness they've unleashed. This is Dark Case File, the story of the man who smiled in court, a criminal with no remorse, and the haunting truth that justice, no matter how final, can never erase the smile of a man who feels nothing,